Hello and welcome to DM It All, a show where we talk about D&D books and tabletop gaming history. When D&D was created in 1975, no one could anticipate how much of a success story it would turn out to be. Nor could TSR, D&D's publisher, anticipate just how strong the demand for D&D products like adventure modules would become. It took until 1978 for TSR to start printing modules en masse. But by that point, the original game was already being phased out, replaced by its more technical sibling, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. The only official adventure released before then was contained in the Blackmoor supplement. It was titled The Temple of the Frog, created by D&D co-creator Dave Arneson. This adventure was based on the original Blackmoor campaign that Arneson used to first develop D&D. While it could technically be labeled as the first D&D adventure, that's a smidge misleading, seeing as it was originally created with the chainmail rules, the wargame D&D was spun off of. It feels more like a chainmail adventure too, with literally hundreds of monsters for players to hack through. The Temple of the Frog was designed more as a sample dungeon for new dungeon masters to analyze, as TSR didn't really see the value in publishing scripted modules at the time. The assumption was that players would simply buy the rules and make up their own stories. But the market for published adventures soon became evident when third-party companies began releasing their own attempts at the idea. TSR licensed and even distributed some of these third-party efforts, before deciding to ultimately write and publish their own adventures. Thus began the Against the Giants series, a collection of modules that served as the first official D&D campaign. These modules were written by Gary Gygax, D&D's other co-creator who would go on to write many of D&D's early and notorious adventures. Gygax's modules tended to form enduring legacies within the franchise, and Against the Giants is no different. During AD&D's second edition, TSR released The Liberation of Geoff, an adventure that expanded the Giants' conflict to take place over an entire kingdom. Fourth edition released The Revenge of the Giants, which was a new story inspired by the original series. And finally, in 5th edition, the original module was woven into Tales from the Yawning Portal, a collection of famous adventures from D&D history, adapted for modern rules. Even 3rd edition gave the Giants series some love, albeit in the form of a novel adaptation. But we're shelving those for a later date, as today we'll be focusing on the original 3 modules: the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and the Hall of the Fire Giant King. As a word of warning, there will be spoilers in this module walkthrough. If you're a player interested in this adventure, we recommend that you stop here and forward this video to your dungeon master. As you'd expect, the plot for D&D's first official adventure is as simple as sliced bread. Giants from different clans have banded together to raid human civilization, which is odd as disparate giant clans rarely agree on anything, much less a supervillain team-up to topple humanity. The module mentions that a wide variety of giants are involved in these raids, but the party will mostly be dealing with these 3 core types: hill giants, frost giants, and fire giants, and these towering menaces will be confronted in that exact order. First up are the hill giants, resembling overgrown ogres with dim-witted brains to match. In fact, they're by and large the dumbest of the giant clans. Frost and fire giants are not only smarter than their hill cousins, but stronger, taller, and tougher as well. They have more sophisticated equipment and come with innate resistances to their respective elements. A few stone and cloud giants have also found themselves scattered amongst the 3 clans. These titans are mostly defined by their skin color, but are also smarter than the other 3 giant types. The party's primary goal is to deal a blow to each of the 3 main clans, and to learn why they united against humanity. They don't have a choice in accepting this mission either, as their refusal will result in them being summarily executed by the local government. The party is forcibly conscripted due to them being the only viable candidates to stop the giants. On the bright side, the player characters are told they get to keep any of the treasure they find. Several old-school modules use this held-at-gunpoint setup to make sure that the party completes their assigned adventure, regardless of their character goals or sketchy morality. This is partially because older modules were originally playtested during D&D tournaments. These tournaments usually revolved around a single dungeon that would test the player's problem-solving skills, rather than their role-playing abilities, and there's no better way to focus on the former than by rigidly robbing the party of their chance at the latter. To this end, the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief only has 11 pages of content, with the entire backstory summarized in a single paragraph. This video has probably spent more time explaining it than the actual module. The party never gets to witness the giant raids themselves, and they essentially start their journey at the doorstep of the Hill Giant home base. While this adventure technically takes place in Gygax's Greyhawk setting, the bearing this has on the plot is minimal. There are no nearby towns to interact with, or even any wilderness zones to explore. The only place the party can rest is a vague cave area located near the dungeon. The party will be safe from the giants in this hollow, as long as they don't leave any obvious tracks leading inside. Each of the 3 modules has a similar, loosely defined break area. As this adventure is intended for characters around level 9, the module provides some pre-generated mercenaries with a wide variety of magical items which the party will likely need. The Steading of the Hill Giant Chief itself is a huge timber stronghold, built out of thick logs. The logs are damp from recent rainfall, which will prevent any arson-inclined players from setting fire to the building from the outside. Even if the party does manage to light the logs ablaze, the hill giants within will simply retreat to the stone basement located beneath the structure. So the party will still have to fight the same amount of giants, just now without the safety of walls to protect them. Gygax in general encourages the DM to have the giants roam around the map, responding to the player actions appropriately. The Giants series is often referred to as a hack-and-slash adventure due to the amount of combat, but that doesn't mean the party should kick down the front door to kickstart the action. If every giant is alerted at the same time, they will try to organize and overwhelm any intruders. The party is better off leaning on their sneaking skills and stealth, which the module illustrates very clearly with the first encounter. If the party enters through the front door of the building, they will find the 2 giant guards stationed in this area passed out, the scent of booze strong on their breath. Each giant has a 95% chance of being killed outright if they are attacked in their sleep. As counterintuitive as it might seem, the front door is the best way to enter this dungeon. The less obvious path through the courtyard will have the players fending off 20 noisy direwolves instead. From the main entrance, the party can go immediately into the clan's Great Hall. This is a terrible idea, as the Hill Giants are currently in the middle of a massive celebration. There are 38 enemies in this room alone, including the beefy Hill Giant Chief Austmar. The party would be better off circumventing this room, heading northward to where the bedrooms are located. If the party finds the children's bedchambers, they can sneak around a lot easier by borrowing some kids' clothes. This will allow them to pose as Hill Giant children, so long as they don't mind slaying some actual Hill Giant children to acquire these garments. The party's ultimate goal, however, is not to kill all of the Hill Giants, but to learn about what caused them to unite with the other giant clans. Unfortunately, the only clue in this module is hidden behind a secret door in a small meeting area. If the party manages to find this door, they can discover a scroll written in the language of giants. It gives instructions for the next giant raid, and is signed by someone named Eklavdra. The scroll also has a triangle symbol with a Y at its center that almost resembles a leering eye. If the party heads to the kitchen, they'll discover a large population of orc slaves working for the giants. The basement alone has over 80 orcs that have been imprisoned for unruly behavior. The prisoners are monitored by over 50 bugbears that have been hired by the hill giants to keep the orcs in line. If the party clears out the boulders in the eastern hallway, they will be able to find even more orcs hiding out in a cavern area. There are over 80 orcs in this location, along with 30 lizard-like troglodytes waiting for an opportunity to escape. But there are no exits to be found deeper in the caves, and the stony corridors are infested with large lizards and carrion crawlers. So instead, the party can rally all of these orcs to create an armed rebellion against the hill giants. This is the easiest way to defeat Austmar, as long as the players don't mind some potentially lengthy mass combat. Once the hill giants are dealt with, the party can search their abode for treasure at their leisure. There are goodies scattered throughout the hill giant steading, but the largest stash is located in the basement behind a secret door. When the party first enters this area, they will likely stumble upon the decoy treasure room first, guarded by 4 hungry manticores. While this room contains some loot, the real treasure room is found behind a second secret door. And what awaits the party behind this super secret door? Why, a hidden pit trap with poison spikes at the bottom. And note that poison in AD&D causes instant death for anyone who fails their saving throw, making this trap lethal in more ways than one. The characters that manage to reach the actual treasure hoard will be rewarded with a large amount of gold and seemingly not much else. That's because the rest of the loot is hidden behind illusions scattered throughout this room. So to get to the real treasure, the party will have to discern 3 secrets in total. From these treasures, what originally appears to be a broken barrel is actually a black metal pendant that will allow the heroes to teleport directly to the next dungeon, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And if the party doesn't find this pendant, they'll instead have to brave the wilderness and hoof it to their next frigid destination. Like the module before it, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl opens with the party prepared to enter their next dungeon. They are now after Grugnr, aka the Frost Giant Jarl. Jarl being the Norse word for chieftain, as D&D giants in general take a lot of influence from Norse mythology. The reason this location is known as a glacial rift is because it is literally located inside the crack of a massive glacier. The Frost Giants have made their home within the tunnels of this cavernous rift. There are very few notable landmarks here outside of some frozen adventurers near the entrance, whose dead bodies have been propped up as a warning to intruders. The layout of the Glacial Rift in general is more spread out and chaotic than the Hill Giant Fortress, and the Frost Giants themselves are more alert and organized than their inebriated cousins. This makes it a lot more likely that the party will accidentally alert enemies in adjacent rooms when attacking a solitary group of giants. The environment itself can also act as a hazard, with sharp winds reducing the party's movement speed by half. Other areas are prone to caving in, and the ledges near the rift are extremely slippery. Characters near the precipice will have a 1 in 6 chance of slipping off the edge. Parties can tie a rope around each other to secure themselves better, but too many failed rolls might cause the entire party to tumble off into the chasm below. Luckily, the party will land in cushioning snow, only suffering a maximum of 10d6 falling damage. Of course, for the squishier party members, this fall might be less lucky and more lethal. Speaking of squishy characters, mages should avoid haphazardly tossing around fireballs. Doing so will make the floor even slipperier thanks to the gallons of newly melted ice. If it's not obvious by now, Gygax was not keen on people setting fire to the entirety of his dungeons. Partway through, the party might assume that reaching the second floor of this dungeon requires descending down into the Glacial Rift, but the only notable thing down here is a massive centipede-like creature known as the Remoraz. This monster is better off avoided, as it can deal some serious damage. If the Remoraz rolls a natural 20, it's even capable of swallowing a character whole, killing them outright. But that's just AD&D for you, an ever-present 5% chance to kiss your butt goodbye. To venture deeper into this dungeon, the party will have to skirt around the rift and head south, not down. This will take them to the second floor, where they'll come across a frost giant skeleton buried in snow. The corpse is holding a map that marks the location therein as the Great Hall. Apparently the skeleton was the victim of a cave-in that has completely buried the Jarl's living area. The only place that the party can explore is a nearby storage room that is currently blocked by a massive boulder. Moving the boulder will allow the party access into the next room, as well as free 2 hungry ice dragons. The skeleton and his map are an elaborate scheme meant to trick any potential invaders. Either the intruders are ambushed by the ice dragons, or they waste their time trying to dig out one of the rooms that is supposedly caved in. To actually make progress, the party will have to move a separate boulder located directly opposite of the ice dragon room. This path leads to a more organized series of caves that make up the Frost Giant kitchens, armory, and Great Hall. There is also a prison area where the party can recruit a powerful ally, a female storm giant. Storm giants are some of the strongest and smartest giants in D&D lore. They also possess weather-based magic and can hurl powerful lightning bolts. Storm giants are also good aligned, allowing this storm giant to be easily recruited, provided that the party is aligned likewise. The Jarl's bedchambers are located near a large frost giant common area, which contains 27 adult frost giants and several of their children. The party can potentially slip by these 40 giants by sneaking through the Jarl's trophy hall, but only if they can keep their greedy mitts off of the treasure. Most of the treasure can be easily pilfered, but touching the mammoth tusks will trigger a magical alarm. After the Jarl is defeated, the party can discover a hidden escape tunnel contained within his private quarters. Hidden within this hidden tunnel is a metal bar protruding from the wall that the party has a 1 in 6 chance of spotting. Lowering the metal bar will transport the party to our next and final location, the Hall of the Fire Giant King. The Fire Giant base is in a hot and mountainous region dotted with plenty of active volcanoes. This area is explicitly inspired by Muspelheim, the home of the fire giants in Norse mythology. The fire giants have the most impressive dungeon of the 3 clans, with their base built into the side of a towering mountain. If the party wants to find a safe place to rest, they will have to journey 2 miles from the dungeon entrance. They must be judicious with their visits, however, as the giants have a cumulative 10% chance of finding this hiding spot each time after the party's 3rd rest. There's only one entrance to this dungeon, watched over by a guard hiding behind a nearby tapestry. He is nigh guaranteed to sound the alarm, alerting the giants in the nearby Great Hall. This could lead to an early encounter with Snurre, the Fire Giant King. There are also 6 more giants and 2 hellhounds stationed in this area, hellhounds being evil dogs with a fiery bark. If this enemy force doesn't seem formidable enough, 12 more hellhounds from the kennel area and a dozen fire giants from the guard barracks will be drawn to the party's position upon hearing the alarm. Fortunately for the heroes, these locations are on the opposite side of the map, so it will take a couple of rounds for these reinforcements to assist their liege. If the party manages to overcome this massive brawl, it will spell the end for the Fire Giant King mere minutes after stepping foot into his dungeon. But their task is far from finished. The party still has to find out who it was that organized the Giant Alliance. Therefore, the rest of the dungeon awaits. The first floor mostly contains the Fire Giant living quarters. If the party opts to find the king's bedchamber, they might run into his obese and ugly wife. The Fire Giant Queen will act oblivious to what's going on, only requiring that the party bend the knee before she can honor any requests. Any character who is foolish enough to obey, however, will be set up for a decapitation attempt by this duplicitous queen. A natural roll of 20 will allow her to instantly behead any characters kneeling before her. The second floor of this dungeon contains a prison area. Like in the other prisons, the party can free some useful allies here. One is a female thief that will assist the party for a bit, before running off with as much treasure as she can carry. There's also a fire giant here in prison for insubordination. The party should avoid recruiting him, however, as he will betray them to reclaim his former status. The best potential ally the party can find is a titan that has been chained up and drugged. Titans are similar to other giant clans, except they are even stronger, smarter, and more attractive, as well as capable of casting spells. If the party does not neutralize the drugs within their new ally, they will have to wait at least 12 hours before the Titan can aid them. A few of the encounters here come with notable set pieces. The torture room, for example, has a fire giant eager to lock player characters inside of a spike-ridden Iron Maiden. His friend is less of a metalhead, however, preferring to shove his opponents down a 90-foot well. Close to this area is a smithy, featuring a fire giant weaponsmith with 2 trolls as his assistants. This is frankly a terrible arrangement for the trolls, as fire is one of the few things that can kill a troll, and the smithy area is teeming with patches of molten lava. The fire giant weaponsmith wields a powerful +4 mace that the party can potentially acquire. That is, if the weaponsmith doesn't first toss the artifact into the lava, which he is likely to do as soon as the tide of battle turns. We should also mention that the party can potentially find the Hill Giant Chief or the Frost Giant Jarl hiding out on this floor too. The giant leaders and their spouses will have fled to this area if the party previously failed to kill them in their respective dungeons, allowing the party the chance for some sweet and brutal closure. The most important room on the second floor is, naturally, hidden behind a secret door. A door which the party is at least likely to notice, as the wall is tinted a purplish brown color. Touching the wall will cause it to hiss in response and strike back if hit, as this door is a mass of tentacles in disguise. The tentacle wall has 200 hit points and can attack up to 20 times with its tentacles, along with 2 poison beak pecks. The party's basic tactic here is to dramatically weaken the creature through dispel magic, or use a disintegrate spell. On the other side of the tentacle wall, the party will encounter 2 Drow clerics. Nowadays, the Drow make frequent appearances in modern D&D stories, so their inclusion may seem fairly run-of-the-mill. But this is literally the first appearance of Drow in anything ever. A party running this adventure back in 1980 would have been rendered nonplussed upon seeing these dark-skinned elves with shocking white hair. The module even comes with an appendix section of sorts, explaining the Drow's abilities and history. They acquired their trademark skin color after surviving centuries in the Underdark, a complex series of caverns located deep within the earth. Note that this adventure was written before the Underdark had its proper name, let alone its harrowing reputation. The story goes that the Drow were driven underground by the other elven factions, due to the Drow being inherently evil creatures. Living underground for so long has given them a sensitivity to daylight, but in exchange they have acquired a wide assortment of useful abilities, such as infrared vision and the ability to hide in shadows. While Drow are significantly weaker than giants in terms of health and damage, they still pose a threat in a lot less overt ways. For one thing, the Drow are a lot more underhanded, drawn to using ranged weapons coated in sleeping poison. AD&D Drow are also trained in magic, and can cast certain spells like Darkness and Fairy Fire once per day. They also have spell resistances that give them a percentage chance to completely ignore a spell effect. The Drow wield unique weapons and armor that Gygax makes sure the party rarely gets to use. Drow items only radiate magic for 50 days maximum, and will outright rot when exposed to sunlight. Gygax sought to limit the use of this equipment because Drow weapons can be terrifyingly powerful. The party can see this firsthand when fighting the Drow clerics that are equipped with strange tentacle rods. 3 rubbery tentacles are attached to these weapons, and getting hit by all of them in a single round will magically weaken a character. This effect varies depending on the rod, as one cleric inflicts a slow status, while the other paralyzes limbs instead. The most dangerous rod, however, is wielded by the female Drow, hiding behind another secret door in this area. Her rod has 6 wriggling tentacles at the end of it, and she only has to land 3 attacks in a round to inflict a -4 attack penalty on her victim. If all 6 tentacles hit, the victim permanently loses a point of dexterity. This woman is a Klavdra, the leader of the Drow in this dungeon, and the one responsible for organizing the giant raids against humanity. Once a Klavdra is dead, the party can uncover some illusory walls located north of her room. This path leads to a temple area decorated with the triangle eye symbol found way back in the hill giant lair. The west mural in this room shows giants bowing down to a black cairn, and the east mural depicts various humanoids being sacrificed to huge squid-like creatures. A set of drums, some chimes, and a dangling metal triangle are scattered about the area. If the party plays these instruments, a glowing golden eye will appear on the altar. Anyone peering at this eye risks immediate death and insanity. If the party is holding all 3 tentacle rods, a giant tentacle will emerge from the altar and grab the nearest living creature. The unfortunate soul will then be dragged away before getting completely annihilated. In exchange, the party will receive an item that they most covet, or something that will help them achieve their ultimate goal. Some parties might even see this as a net benefit, depending on which member gets dragged away. For most parties, however, this room is better off being avoided, and they should instead focus on finding the secret 3rd floor of this dungeon. To access this hidden floor, the party will have to find a secret staircase in the Hall of the Dead Kings. This is where the fire giants keep the coffins of their deceased monarchs. The only other alternative is hidden in one of the random guard rooms. The fire giant here doesn't know anything about the 3rd floor, but his human prisoners do. That's because they're were-rats in disguise, loyal only to the Drow. If threatened, they will turn into tiny rats and scurry away through some drain pipes. To find the secret staircase in this room, the party will likely have to stumble upon it themselves. Upon reaching the 3rd floor, the party will quickly realize they are in a chaotic series of winding caves. These are all natural rock formations, and there is very little lighting outside of a few pockets of lava. This area keeps in line with the dungeon's fire theme to a certain extent, as there are still fire giants, fire beetles, and fire lizards scurrying about. But this area also has a strong Underdark theme, containing a lot of drow and other nasty creatures that lurk deep beneath the earth. For example, the party can find both ropers and piercers here. Ropers pretend to be stalagmites on the floor and try to grab characters with rope-like appendages, while piercers pretend to be stalactites on the ceiling before they drop down to chomp on their potential prey. There are even mind flayers lurking around this area too, sent to keep tabs on the mischievous drow. For those that don't know, mind flayers, aka Illithids, are a powerful psionic species with a squid-like face. There's some game that came out that you might know them from. In combat, their favorite action is to strike enemies with a wide area psionic blast. This attack produces a range of effects, from insanity to confusion to outright death. Provided its victim is still alive, the Mind Flayer can make a melee attack with its mouth tentacles. If this attack hits, the tentacles latch on to the victim's skull. The Mind Flayer will then suck out the victim's brain within 1 to 4 rounds, killing them instantly. Other notable monsters in this area include a large community of not 5 or 6, but 56 trolls, living in the southernmost caverns. Hopefully the horrible smell choking the tunnels near here is enough to ward off characters from exploring further. There is also a red dragon living on this floor as well, sitting atop a glittering treasure hoard that will no doubt lure in unwanted guests. But both the dragon and hoard are illusions, the former being a gorgon in disguise. A gorgon is a bull-like creature with a sweeping, petrifying breath attack. Funnily enough, hidden right next to this false red dragon lair is a real red dragon lair. If the party is able to find this secret cave and defeat its bona fide red dragon, they will be rewarded with the largest treasure haul in this entire adventure. But they'll have to keep in mind that their goal isn't to acquire shiny objects, it's to learn more about the Drow's intentions. To that end, they can find a group of Drow in these tunnels working for a priestess named Nedeline. Nedeline is a Klobdra's rival and hopes to undermine her plans. Smart players can make a tedious alliance with Nedeline in lieu of fighting her. Some Drow are also stationed on a bridge near this area, overlooking a lava bed. This unique set piece will likely serve as the final encounter of this adventure. After defeating these Drow, the party will find a map depicting an escape tunnel, leading straight into the Underdark. It is up to the Dungeon Master whether they want to include this map in the adventure, as it is essentially a tease for the next leg of the quest, Descent into the Depths of the Earth. While this module is technically the last of the Giant series, the Giant series itself segues directly into a new trilogy of modules called the Drow series. That's why the entire third floor acts as a sort of preview for the new module, showcasing only some of the dreadful dangers that await, snarling in the dark. Despite the fact that D&D has almost always had a wide variety of giant types, giants themselves are rather repetitive as enemies. The towering Goliaths all fight in the same manner, with the only real differences being statistical, that is, their strength, HP, and elemental resistances. This is evidenced by the fact that a lot of the boss monsters in this module fight as if they were different giants. The Hill Giant Chief, for example, fights as if he were a frost giant, while the frost giant Jarl fights as if he were a cloud giant. It's part of the reason why we didn't go into more detail involving the major boss encounters. The only real unique attack giants have is to hurl boulders at distant foes, with some giants being better at tossing stones than others. Which is why it's all the more impressive that Against the Giants is as diverse as it is. Each of the 3 dungeons managed to feel very different, thanks to their layout and pacing. The Hill Giant Steading can open with a massive brawl, but allows sneaky players to pick off enemies group by group. The Frost Giant lair starts off slow before it devolves into a series of increasingly dangerous battles. And finally, the Fire Giant Hall explodes out of the gate with a stream of endless enemies, before transitioning into a dark, lethal dungeon delve. Variation is an important feature to these modules, as even though the giants lack this trait, the rest of the enemies do not. Not only do the giants employ a variety of other humanoids, but the party will also run into wild animals and dungeon creatures, lurking in the more cavernous sections of each layer. These modules are also terrific as standalone adventures if your DM wants to throw in a particular giant layer into their campaign. The only module that is heavily tied to the central narrative is the Fire Giant Hall, and even there the DM can hack off the third floor and close things out naturally with the Eclavdra encounter. Should the Dungeon Master remove the Drow entirely, there would still be plenty of dungeon left over, as these modules are surprisingly lengthy. Despite the short page counts, these adventures are packed top to bottom with content, lacking only in scripted events. This can be viewed as a flaw, however, as not every player will be interested in 3 long dungeon crawls centered around slaughtering giants. At their core, these modules are murder hobo adventures, even though creative players can still create some good role-playing opportunities through negotiation and deception. Some players might also want to play these adventures just to see the first appearance of the Drow, despite the fact that these stories don't actually use the Underdark denizens until the very end. The Drow series itself, which we'll be covering next time, is an unpredictable follow-up to these modules, exhibiting a completely different structure and style. We also find it strange that this module starts at such a high level, when most D&D campaigns would usually end around level 9. That, and there is a considerable amount of large-scale combat, even for an early D&D adventure. We wish good luck to any of the DMs trying to honestly control the 80 orcs during the prison break. These are all obviously signs that this module was created in D&D's infancy, before the formula had been perfected. In fact, most modules going forward would take a completely different approach, starting at level 1, focusing on a town with a nearby dungeon causing problems, and featuring a plot that would resolve by the end of the module's runtime. If a sequel was planned, it was typically in the same vein regarding plot and style. Even tournament modules would focus more on traps and puzzles going forward, requiring a lot less DM interpretation than this adventure does. But these oddities make the Giant series even more of a unique experience that stands out among a sea of modernized modules. It's an adventure unashamed of its grizzled age, an eternally interesting snapshot into D&D's early design.